Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now let's give a warm welcome to our main speaker, Dallas.
Hi everybody, I'm Dallas. I'm alcoholic. Recovering rock star. Recovering prisoner of Woodstock. Sue, I really identified with your story. I too learned how to be a woman in this program. I don't know, man. It's a full moon out or something. This is it's weird. Excuse me. I went to my first AA meeting in 1972, and I knew that that wasn't for me. Rock and roll drummers don't talk about God, especially back in the 60s. And I want you to know that I worked very hard at being cool. That was my goal in life. I remember, I guess I was in the first or second or third grade. I think it was maybe the fourth grade. I have good long-term memory. It's the short-term memory that was affected by all the drugs. And Elvis was on the scene. And I would stand in front of the mirror for hours and practice to sneer. And, you know, I thought Elvis was cool, you know. I combed my hair like Elvis. Actually, you know, my mother combed my hair like Elvis. That's what's even worse about this story. I did not want to come to Alcoholics Anonymous, like I said in the beginning. Alcoholics Anonymous, as far as I was concerned, was for a bunch of old drunks. And I certainly was not an old drunk. I was a proud junkie. I had two uncles that died from this disease. One uncle died in jail after having a car accident, and of course he had a concussion, and the police thought he was just drunk, and he died in jail. The other uncle died of cirrhosis of the liver. And, you know, I kind of grew up around death. I grew up watching you know, we lived in this really cool old house that, you know, I still have dreams about that house today. Because that was my memory of security and safety. And when I remember the city bought the house to tear it down because they were building a freeway through our part of the neighborhood. It was a very old part of the neighborhood. And that's when things really started going south for me. I could never remember a joke. I could never fit in. I never was like popular in school, and I didn't know how to talk. I didn't know how to communicate my feelings. And as a matter of fact, looking back on my family history, nobody knew how to communicate their feelings in my family. I remember my grandmother, you know, like I'm part Spanish, and you know, my first experience with shame was when my mother tried to teach me to speak Spanish. No, it was my grandmother, and my mother hit the ceiling, and she said, "Don't you ever teach him how to speak Spanish. He's going to grow up to be a white boy." And I heard this, and I got this message, A, that I wasn't a white guy, B, that there was something seriously wrong with who I was. And I'd walk by my grandmother and she'd say, "Pobrecito," in Spanish, you know. Every time I walked by her, I couldn't figure out what the fuck she was talking about. It means poor little asshole, you know. No, it doesn't mean poor little asshole. It means poor little guy, you know. You know, from day one, I've always been able to get what I want. I'm good at it. I have puppy dog eyes. And I had the ability from the time I was very young to kind of use those puppy dog eyes. Kind of look pathetic. You know? If I had a tail, I'd fucking wag it. And I'd always get my way. And not really a good thing for an alcoholic that I was going to become. You know, it didn't strike me till after I got clean that I've always been an addict and an alcoholic. And I remembered something very significant, and I've spoke here before, so some of you have heard this, but oh well. I used to have really bad stomach problems. You know, I was a nervous kid. I was a sensitive kid, and I had ulcers at 4 and 5. And my mother brought this stuff home from the doctor called paregoric. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. In fact, this was my first significant experience with discovering that there was something seriously wrong with me physically. That when I swallowed this nasty tasting shit, you would not believe how well, of course you would. You're alcoholics. Stupid comment. This stuff tasted so bad, I was gagging as it went down. And I don't know why I said this to my mother, and I don't know why I remember it today, but I remember saying to her, "Wow, Mom, I feel great. This is the way I'm supposed to feel." And I don't remember feeling particularly high. I just remember feeling okay in my own skin. And I remember having this very distinct experience that this was the way I was supposed to feel. We'll deal with rejection in a minute. Anyway, you know, had a lot of excuses why I needed to drink and use, as all of us do, you know. Some of us come from really shitty homes. Some of us come from abusive homes. And worst of all, some of us come from perfect homes where there's absolutely nothing fucking wrong. So you feel really shitty when you find yourself in a rehab somewhere. But my mom was so cool, and my dad, he was always there. You know, I must be really bad. My my mother took me to see a movie called The Gene Krupa Story when I was 10 years old, and that changed my life. And you know, I don't know if there's some old dudes in here. So Sal Mineo played Gene Krupa. Now later we'll even get into that a little bit later. Sal Mineo was gay, but I didn't know that at the time. He was cool. He was cool because he played Gene Krupa, and he could really play the drums, by the way. And he did such a good job in this movie. I remember sitting there. My eyes must have been this big. But my mother, God love her, had a very definite plan when she took me to see this movie. You know, I realized this later. See, she knew. She was a smart lady. She knew that I needed a way out. I needed a way out. And so we sat through this movie, and I watched Gene Krupa as a kid come to New York and carrying his little drums on his back, and he shows up, and he takes the town by storm, man. And a couple months later, he's living in this big flat, and he's got 50 women around him, and he's cool, and he's, you know, he's happy, and I remember just going, wow, I want what he's got, and I'm going to get what he's got. And I remember that because, oh, and this is really weird because in the movie, he was set up by some girl who planted some pot in his jacket. They cleaned up the movie, I guess, because he was a junkie, this guy, you know. So the movie, believe those movies, folks. They really tell you the truth. He got arrested, went all the way down to the bottom, couldn't get a job, living in the streets. I remember they showed him smoking a joint and nodding out. I don't think so. Eating a lot, baby, but not. And he'd drop his drumsticks. It's very dramatic, you know, and I just went, wow, how cool. And so, I mean, really, I thought this was all very cool. And I just kind of remember walking out of that theater going, wow, I want to do this. So, you know, my mom had this boyfriend, his name was Fricky, and he was a crop duster, and he was like a manly man. And, you know, I was hanging out with my cousin, actually, who wasn't a manly man, and he used to put on dresses and stuff. And it kind of got my mother a little worried. So she had me hang out with Fricky, who was a manly man. And Fricky took me to crop dusting, and you know, and I used to load his airplane full of God knows what, you know. I remember it just said poison, you know. He said, whatever you do, don't get any of this stuff on you. And it'd be spilling all over me, and I did, you know. But I'd load his crop duster, and I watched him, and I loved this man. I loved this man. See, my dad was gone. My dad was gone. I loved my dad, too, but he was God. See, this was more dad. My dad was God, because he was never in the picture, and I had this very inflated idea of who I mean, those old World War II movies about the pilots, man. My dad was a pilot. He was a fucking hero, man. But he was an absent hero. So I had all these visions of when he was going to come and rescue me. But Fricky, meanwhile, took his place. I guess he took his place with Mom, too. I don't know. But he gave me two $100 bills. And I went out and bought my first set of drums. And I remember I was just, you know, like we are, 24 hours a day. It's all I thought about. And I would sit behind those drums and play the records. And that's all I did. I didn't have any friends, man. I had one little friend, a little Mexican kid named Joe, and he was my only friend, and I remember. And we became friends because we met in the first grade and we got into a pencil fight. And yeah, I mean, I stabbed the shit out of him, he stabbed the shit out of me, and we were inseparable after that. And God, man, we're so sick, you know. We bond. That's who I bond with. People who fucked with me, you know. And vice versa. I'm trying not to draw this out. Anyway, man, you know, I lived Mr. Krupa's story. In 1965, I moved out here. My mother had been dead since I was 13. She died of a heart attack. Died in her sleep, and I found her. My father had been killed in a plane crash. I was married the day before my 16th birthday. I had a son on the way. I was moving out here to become a rock star. And I moved out here and I dumped my wife, my first wife at the time, at her mother's house in Whittier. And I came to Hollywood and became a Hollywood street kid. And I hung out. And 1965 in Hollywood, by the way, was happening. You know, the Birds were playing down the street. I mean, you know, there was a lot of stuff going on. And, you know, and the pot was flowing. And like Sue, I needed, you know, I'm grateful today that there was all those drugs available to me. You know, I don't want anybody here to regret your past. You know, it says in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that we'll learn not to regret our past, but that we'll find our experiences will help someone else, no matter how far down the scale we've gone. And that was an important one to me, too, because I went really far down the scale. So I don't regret that, you know. I don't forget it either. I don't, you know, what's very important, and I don't want anybody who's sitting out there trying to figure out an angle to this shit that somehow you can go back to using, because that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it worked when it worked, and it stopped working when it stopped working. And if you're sitting in this room or standing in this room, trust me, it stopped working. And it's never going to work again. That's all you need to know. If I don't say another word tonight, all you need to know is that, yeah, it used to work. Yeah, we needed it. And yeah, it stopped working. Just like those relationships that we love so much. You ever tried to go back to an old relationship? Jeez. You know, you think, man, what did I see in that person? It's like, and they're probably going the same thing. God, I can't believe I even touched him. You know. So, I came out here. You know, and I became Gene Krupa. I hooked up with a guy named Stephen Stills, and we met some other guys, and we put a band together called Crosby, Stills and Nash, and we made a record before we had a bass player, and we made a record before we had a band, really. It was just 3 singers and a drummer. Now, I'm getting to the rejection part of it. The band's name was Crosby, Stills and Nash. Do you hear Dallas Taylor in there? No, they stuck my fucking picture on the back of the album cover, which is where, you know, that's been my life experience. Back of the album. I got an honorable mention in the famous drummers, Will Brook. Honorable mention. You know, that's where I always saw myself as less than. And you know, I was talking with my friend Marcia earlier, and we were talking about how we manifest our own, you know, troubles. You know, my fear will manifest my problems and make them reality. So my biggest fear was somehow that these guys would all of a sudden discover that I was really not talented at all, that I was really they made a mistake. And I was only 20 years old, you know, and these guys were already big stars. Man, I did not belong. I want you to know, I had this incredible sinking feeling in my stomach that this was all going to come to a crashing end. And so, what happened? You know, I created that scenario through, well, that and a few ounces of cocaine. You know, for somebody who hated alcohol, I cannot believe the amounts of alcohol that I used to consume. And the only reason I drank alcohol was because it took the edge off the coke. Until I discovered, by the way, the one thing I swore I'd never do was to stick a needle in my arm and to do some heroin. My grandmother told me, when I first told her I'm going to be a drummer, Grandma, she said, "Oi, my God, you're going to grow up and be a junkie." And I said, no, Grandma, that's just jazz musicians. I'm going to be a rock drummer. And she just shook her head. So I made a conscious effort, I want you to know, to never do that. God damn it, man. I got fired from Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and Young then. I never knew why. I never found out what happened. And, well, Stephen got fired too, but that's not his story. We're not telling his story. You might hear his story someday, but not from me. Oh, man. I went to my first AA meeting, like I told you, in 1972. This wasn't for me. I went to try to keep my band, you know, keep my job, keep my girlfriend, keep you at bay, you know, whoever you were always telling me what to do, what not to do. Unlike Sue, it wasn't about climbing. I wanted to climb the roof. If you told me, Dallas, don't jump off the fucking roof, I'd say, fuck you, and jump off the roof. It's defiance. And it describes people like me in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous as the defiant ones. Right around Thanksgiving of 1984, I was living in Silver Lake, California, with my then third wife. And if you're wondering, I don't even know how we got there. My then third wife, the first wife is gone, the career's gone, I still had my gold records. Don't ask me how I got them back from the dealers. I don't know how they got back in my hands. But I had they all scratched up because I had no place to go. And I used to carry my gold records around. Wow. And I'd set them up in the Tropicana Motel, which we used to live in. And my friend Nick wants me to be sure and tell you that, yes, I was supported by 2 hookers. Now, he says I was a pimp, but I wasn't a pimp. I was a rock star, and they were supporting me because I was down on my luck. Okay. There, you happy, Nick? Okay. So, 1984, it's all gone. It's been gone for a long time. You know, the word Dallas Taylor is synonymous with slimeball junkie. I was the Lord companion. You know, I was the example of what not. Careful, Steve, you'll be like Dallas. Careful, John, you'll be like Dallas. You know, I was the example of what not to be. My life was a series of pitiful, incomprehensible demoralizations, one after another. Yet my ego was still at fucking Madison Square Garden, you know. Really. You know, I was living in the motel at the Tropicana with my gold records set up on there. I couldn't understand why you didn't front me some more dope, because, you know, I was Dallas Taylor, for Christ's sake. In 1984, I found myself in a liquor store, and they tell me I did this because I was in an alcohol blackout. And they said I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I guess one of our songs was playing over the PA. I'm going, that's me! Don't you know who I am? I'm Dallas Taylor. Somebody give me $20. Fucking grandiose. I don't think I ever got the $20, but something happened this time. I went back and I had not a spiritual, a moment of clarity. I had a moment of clarity. Outside body, I saw who I'd really become. And I made a conscious decision that this was somebody that could not live anymore. So I went back to my little house in Silver Lake, and I walked up to the stairs, and I went in to wake up my wife at the time. She was asleep. And I said, I'll show you. And I walked into the kitchen, and I grabbed a butcher knife, and I stuck it right here. And I said to myself, I really wish I hadn't done that. But I was cool. And I was, bleeding, and I said, if I'm still alive in the morning, take me to the doctor. And she said, okay. I went back to bed. Truth. So, unfortunately, I've only left about 5 minutes to tell you what it's like now. You now have a very clear picture of what it was like. What's happened now in all these these almost 13 years is I've survived a liver transplant. I've survived a fourth marriage. Now, see, this one puzzled me because I was sober when I married her. And I thought, well, Jesus Christ, man, I'm sober. I must have been able to make the right decision. But you see, what I've learned is that this disease does not go away. I've had to do many fourth steps and fifth steps dealing with the wreckage of my sobriety. And the wreckage of my sobriety is once in a while I forget that I'm an alcoholic and an addict, and that it has absolutely nothing to do with drugs and alcohol. It is me and my inability to think and process. And, it describes me in the big book as bodily and mentally different from my fellows. Well, see, I used to strive for that, but now I understand what they mean. And that is I don't think straight. I have, I see life in a distorted manner, My incredible magnifying mind, God love it, I think all the scenarios, like I did when I was in the band, like I did when I was 12, like I did when I was 10. I imagine the worst, so I won't be disappointed. But the problem with that is I create the worst. So I've had to learn, very late in sobriety, by the way, that my being clean and sober today doesn't mean I'm going to be happy. My being clean and sober today means that I have a choice every day. I can't do what I did yesterday and make it work today. I have to get up and do these routines. I was taught very early on, get up and make your fucking bed. And to this day, I cannot leave my house without making the bed, because I don't want to go back there. And I'm that scared of it. And I work in recovery today, by the way. And some of you in this room know that. Some of you in this room have experienced that. And I have to do that because God knows how sick I am. And he loves me dearly. And this is what he's chosen for me to do. And I have to stay close to the newcomers because, see, I forget. You know, my friend Mickey Bush on his whatever they're called. Anyway, ism is incredibly short memory. Fear is fuck everything and run. And that's me, you know. And today, all I can tell you is I believe in God. God is cool. God loves me, and you know what? I'm grateful for everything. I live in gratitude for all the things that I have today. I live in constant gratitude. I survived life-threatening surgery. It's been almost 8 years since my liver transplant, man, and I'm standing here before you. You know, a month ago I had an angioplasty. Just had a little pain in my left arm. This is what killed my mom. See, so God wants me around, you know. And I'm grateful for what he's given me. But I got to tell you, I am more grateful for what he's taken away. Yeah. All the stuff that I thought I needed was what almost killed me. So the key, I guess, here for you and for me is to just fucking surrender and give up the fight, because it's a done deal. It's a fixed game. The result is already in. All we have to do is survive and not fuck it up. And that means one day at a time. And it means working with a sponsor. It means working the steps. And it means working with another alcoholic. Because as long as it's all about me, I'm doomed. I have to keep it all about you. So anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.